So in this matchup, it is Master Yi Ramp versus Jinx Aggro. The two battlefields we have is the Zon Warrens as well as the Obelisk Power. Obelisk of Power states that at the beginning of the first beginning phase of each player, you get to channel one rune extras. So on my first turn, instead of starting with 2, I start with 3. I play Find Your Center, which will give me a card draw as well as a rune exhausted to ramp. So my opponent starts off with 4 runes instead of 3 due to Obelisk of Power. He contemplates whether or not he's going to play his Jinx. Jinx's ability is that if she has 1 or less cards in her hand at the beginning of upkeep, she draws 1 extra card, and Master Yi states that when he is defending, he gets +2 if it's the only unit. So my opponent plays the deckhand, and the deckhand's ability allows you to be able to play it into an open battlefield for the cost of 3 energy. He conquers the Zon Warren, discards the Flame Chomper, he pays the extra power cost to be able to enter into the Flame Choppers. He plays a Seal of Rage. By recycling a power, he gets the Seal of Rage, and the Seal of Rage basically allows you to be able to exhaust it for 1 extra red power, or Fury power, I believe is what it is. On my turn, I exhaust 4 runes to get 4 energy to ramp 2 runes, and then I will play 2 runes to play as Zonya's. Zonya's Hourglass states that when a unit would be destroyed, I can recall it back to the base. Currently, I have ramped really hard, so I'm in a really good position. My opponent only has 4 runes in total. For holding the Zon Warren, he gets an extra point, so now he's at 2 points. He has the Flame Chompers at his base, so he's ready to play it out. It can enter into the Obelisk of Power. He instead plays the Scrap Heap. Basically, what that card allows you to do is it allows you to, when it's played, discarded, or killed, you can draw an extra card. Then he taps or exhausts another 2 to enter into Vi. Instead of paying the power cost for Vi, he uses the Seal of Rage to be able to pay that power cost. On my turn, I have 10 runes available. As a result, I will exhaust 9 runes and pay the 9 energy for the Dazzling Aurora. Dazzling Aurora states that at the end of my turn, I can flip through my deck until I hit a unit. Once a creature is revealed, I can play it onto my base on my end phase. So we are able to grab the Tasty Feyfolk, and it basically says Death Knell. I can channel 2 runes exhausted and draw 1. It also has the ability to accelerate if I pay 1 energy and 1 power, but we're using it for its ramp. It is a weaker body for 7, so it's not the strongest body, but it does give you extra resources. So my opponent, for holding both fields, puts him from 3 conquer points to 5 conquer points, so 3 more points, he will be in a very winning position. However, I was able to get my Dazzling Aurora out early, which allows me to be able to ramp out. So right now I am holding a Dead Bloom Predator in my hand, which allows me to play it into a conquered battlefield right off the get-go. So currently my opponent is debating on whether or not he reinforces a battlefield or if he wants to kill the Tasty Feyfolk. So my opponent decides to use Falling Star to target my Tasty Feyfolk, and it says it does 3 damage twice to a unit. I do have a Defy in hand, which I do try to play. However, I am not allowed to play a Defy because Defy specifically says you counter a spell that costs 4 less or energy or 2 power. Because Falling Star has 2 power. I cannot defy it. Defy can only defy a spell that costs up to 4 energy and up to 1 power. And because Falling Star has 2 power, I'm not allowed to defy it. So as a result, I let the Tasty Faefolk die. However, I do misplay because I do have a Zhonya's on my board that I do not use. I realize after the fact I hovered the Zhonya's and I tried to trigger it. However, because I missed the timing and drew all the cards and channeled the runes, I missed the timing on the Zhonya's. So that was a massive misplay on my part. My opponent laughs at me. However, that's just kind of what happens in a card game. That's basically what happened. I literally channeled the 2, drew a card, and tried to go back in time, which is completely not allowed. So yeah, that's an oopsies. so that's an oopsies. Big misplay. Had I used the Zhonya's, I would have had the Tasty Faefolk on the board ready when it's my turn to be able to conquer, but because I didn't, I missed out. However, it isn't too big of an issue because on my turn, I do have a Dead Bloom Predator ready to be able to be placed on the board. My opponent, though, does set up a Jinx on his turn. I do trigger the Dead Bloom on my turn to be able to contest the Obelisk of Power. Currently, right now, there's only a total of 6 power to do it. However, my opponent also misplays a little bit because he doesn't realize that Vi's ability allows him to be able to recycle his trash to give it more power and give it ganking. However, because I conquer the Obelisk of Power, I get my first conquer point. Now, I do have a couple of options right now. I have quite a bit of extra runes available. I have 5 available, so I could put down the charm because I was thinking or whether or not I should play the charm. Because my opponent has 1 rune available, I will bring the Jinx to me. It is a 6 might because it's +2 for attacking, but it also, the Dead Bloom has 10 for defending since it gets these +2 might on defense for his ability. My opponent doesn't have any cards to be able to defend it, and I end my turn and I trigger my Dazzling again. I flip through my 5 cards and I gather another Faefolk. Now, with the Tasty Faefolk, I contemplate whether or not I decide to put it into my base to conquer later, or if I decide to reinforce with Dead Bloom, but I decide that it would be better for it to be in base so that way I can contest the Zon Warrens, because right now my opponent is going to go up to 6 points for holding, or he should be going up to 6 points for holding, and I would be still sitting at the 1. I think he forgets. Nope, he doesn't. Yeah, he puts it there right now. Yeah, so he's at 6 points right now. So if he can conquer my Dead Bloom, he would technically win on the next turn because he would be able to have his out. If he takes over the Obelisk of Power, it would take me over to 7, or take him to 7, and then if I can't get rid of both units on both battlefields, I would lose. So currently right now, my opponent's in a tough spot because he only has 3 cards in his hand, and it's really hard for him to be able to deal with the Dead Bloom. Dead Bloom on defense right now is 10, and even if it doesn't defend for 10, it has 8 might, and for my opponent to get over it, he has to do massive damage. Now, my friend or my opponent uses acceptable loss, and acceptable loss says each player kills one of their gears. Because I have Zhonya's in the back, I am able to get rid of the Zhonya's instead of the Dazzling Aurora because both are gears. So my original misplay of not triggering Zhonya's actually helps me out because the Zhonya's buffers the defense from the acceptable loss. Now, my opponent misplayed earlier for putting Vi out early out. So The issue with him putting Vi early out is that Vi states that you can recycle 1 card from your trash to give it +1 might this turn. My opponent had 8 cards in his trash, so he could have maxed out his Vi to 11 might, and that would have been able to swing over my Dead Boom Predator. As a result, that would have gotten him his 7 point. And based off of my hand right now, I wouldn't be able to win because I was drawing dead. Now my opponent is in a really bad spot. Both of us misplayed, but at this point this deck is going to win. I put in the White Flame Protector to reinforce the Obelisk of Power, making the Fey Folk going up to 14. When you conquer the Zon Warrens, it forces you to discard a card to draw a card. I am playing a version of ramp, a dragon ramp deck. It's a little bit more mid-range because I do play slightly smaller dragons, but I do realize that if you're playing a Dazzling Aurora deck, it's best not to have any small units, since you want to be able to hitting your high value cards from the Dazzling Aurora. Now my opponent exhausts 5 and gets Draven. Draven is sitting at 9 power because Draven states that it gains might equal to the conquer points it has. Because my opponent has 6 points, Draven is a 6 + 3, so it's 9. Now my opponent still isn't technically out. He could technically use Vi's ability, but he thought that it was a once per turn ability. This is where I tell my opponent to recycle his trash for Vi's ability, because Vi can consistently pump herself up. Because there are 9 cards in the trash, Vi can go up to 12. Now most people think that it is only once per turn, but because the card does not stake once per turn, it's actually funny, because during the game that we were actually playing, he realized that at this point he could have swung earlier or kept Vi. Now Vi is very versatile because it can also get bigger with ganking, so it's actually a very strong win condition. However, at this point my opponent is losing his mind, so I'll just kind of like let this interaction play out.
Would send Vi up, and then because she's ganking, you'd slam Vi on the other side, and you conquer both sides with just only Vi.
Oh, you're so smart. Jesus, I didn't know that.
You buff the shit out of Vi. Vi is like 10 or 11 or whatever. Slam into one thing by herself, kill it, and then slam the other side.
All right, Scoop. I will make those edits to the deck. That's interesting, because like,
yeah, right.
And at this point, my friends, we were talking about a very specific tip, which is the Ride the Wind spell. And just to put on the board to show you what it is, it says move a friendly unit and ready it. With Vi combo specifically, you can use Vi to get really big by trashing a ton of cards or recycling a ton of trash cards. So Vi can consistently and easily get up to 10 might, 11 might, and you can use Ride the Might to send her into a battlefield and take control of it. And because it's Ride the Wind, it becomes ready as well. And because Vi has ganking, you can conquer 2 battlefields, which is a very strong swing. If you guys like this type of video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys until next time. Bye bye for now.